Keeping up with blockchain data these days. It
Yeah.
really feels like trying to find one specific grain of sand on a beach that just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
It really does. The amount of information is just staggering.
And then figuring out if what you find is actually reliable, that's a whole other level of challenge.
Exactly. The core idea of blockchain, open, transparent data, it often gets bogged down. Actually accessing and, crucially, verifying that data efficiently at scale, it's a huge bottleneck for innovation.
Which brings us nicely to what we're exploring today. We've been digging into a really interesting project called Space and Time, SXT for short. And their main goal, it seems, is to provide this trustworthy, efficient way for things like smart contracts applications to tap into data, both the stuff on blockchains and data that lives, elsewhere, off-chain.
Right.
So for you, listening in, wanting to get smart on these important topics without spending endless hours researching, consider this your fast track. We're aiming to help you understand what makes SXT tick and why it might be, well, significant.
Precisely. Our job here is to pull out the key stuff, what the project actually does, the clever tech behind it, and why you should probably pay attention.
Okay, let's do it.
So let's dive in.
All right, so at its core, Space and Time, they describe themselves as a blockchain focused on ZK-proven data. That sounds important. Let's start there.
Yeah, ZK-proven data. The key piece of tech driving this is something they call proof of SQL.
Proof of SQL.
Like, think of it like an incredibly fast, almost like a lightning-fast tool for verifying data, and it's built using zero-knowledge proofs.
ZK proofs. Heard a lot about those. Remind us quickly.
Sure, zero-knowledge proofs. They're basically a cryptographic method. They let you prove something is true without revealing all the details behind why it's true, like proving, the solution to a complex puzzle without actually showing anyone your step-by-step work.
Got it. So this proof of SQL is like a super fast ZK tool. They call it a sub-second ZK coprocessor. What does that actually let you do in the blockchain world?
Okay, practically speaking, it means smart contracts, AI agents, really any app that needs to talk to a blockchain can ask really complex analytical questions about massive amounts of data.
Huge amounts, like whole blockchain history.
Exactly. What's happening across different chains, maybe even data from the real world, off-chain sources. And this is the critical part. It cryptographically proves that the answers it gets are accurate, that they haven't been messed with.
So it's like getting an undeniable mathematical proof delivered alongside your data query result.
Precisely. You get the answer, and you get the proof that the answer is correct and trustworthy.
Right. So it's not just finding data, it's having that rock-solid certainty about its correctness. And you can prove it.
Yeah.
Which ties straight into their mission, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Giving smart contracts access to the entire history of major chains like Ethereum, plus all sorts of off-chain data, and doing it all verifiably, like complete historical access.
Wow, that sounds powerful for getting the full picture. Absolutely. Think about it. Instead of smart contracts just seeing, recent events or easily accessible stuff, they could potentially analyze years of transaction data or combine on-chain history with real-world events, make much smarter, more informed decisions.
And the key innovation here seems to be that proof of SQL, that sub-second ZK coprocessor. You're saying the speed is what makes this possible.
Yes, the speed is a huge part of it. Sub-second means the verification happens incredibly quickly.
Faster than blinking, basically. Why is that speed so vital for smart contracts?
Well, blockchains work in rhythms, right? Blocks get produced at set intervals. If a smart contract needs data to make a decision and execute an action, the verification of that data has to happen fast enough to fit within that block time window.
Otherwise, it misses its chance or slows everything down.
Exactly. Some other ways of doing verifiable computation can be, well, much slower, sometimes taking minutes or longer. Proof of SQL speed being sub-second is a potential game changer. It means a smart contract can ask a complex question, get the data, and get the ZK proof verifying it. All back on the blockchain, ready to use, within a single block's time. That's a massive efficiency jump.
Okay. So power to do complex analysis, trust the outcome implicitly, and do it fast enough not to miss the boat on the blockchain.
Oh.
That makes sense. And this tech, it seems to have attracted some serious attention. I saw Microsoft invested. That's a pretty big deal in this space.
It is. A Microsoft investment is a significant endorsement, especially for a Web3 project. It really signals that a major tech player sees real potential in Space and Time's unique approach to verifiable data.
And it wasn't just Microsoft, was it? I remember seeing other big names linked to them.
That's right. You've got major institutions like U.S. Bank involved, cloud giants like Microsoft Azure, obviously, but also Google BigQuery. And then leading Web3 projects think Chainlink, Sui, ZK Sync. They're either integrating with SXT or actually building stuff within the ecosystem.
Wow, that's quite a list. U.S. Bank, Azure, Google Cloud, Chainlinks, Sui, ZK Sync.
Yeah. It provides really strong validation. It suggests the technology isn't just theoretical, it's being actively recognized and adopted by key players across finance, cloud, and Web3. It's like getting a thumbs up from multiple trusted sources all at once.
Okay, so we get the mission, the core tech, the backing. Let's talk products. What does Space and Time actually offer right now? One term that stood out was verifiable blockchain indexing. What's that about?
Think of verifiable blockchain indexing as their system for, well, gathering, organizing, and indexing data from major blockchains, Ethereum, others. They essentially create this comprehensive, searchable library of on-chain information, but built in a way that its integrity can be verified later.
Okay, so they build this verifiable library of blockchain data. Where does that library live? Is that where the decentralized database, the SXT chain, comes in?
Exactly right. The SXT chain acts as the foundation for storage. It's a decentralized database where all that indexed blockchain data and potentially other off-chain data too isn't just stored. It also gets cryptographically signed by the network's validators. That signature is like a digital stamp of authenticity, proving the data hasn't been altered since it was stored.
Right, so data's collected, organized, signed for integrity, and stored securely. And then the sub-second ZK coprocessor, the proof of a SQL engine, comes back into play to actually query this data.
Precisely. When someone, a user, an app, a smart contract, asks a question about the data stored on the SXT chain, that sub-second ZK coprocessor gets to work. It runs the calculations needed to answer the query against the signed data, and critically, it generates that zero-knowledge proof alongside the answer.
The proof that verifies the computation.
Exactly. That proof is irrefutable evidence that the answer derived from the stored data is accurate. This verified result can then be sent back to the user, or even directly onto a major blockchain for a smart contract to use.
Okay, that really clarifies how the pieces fit. Indexing gathers and organizes. The SXT chain stores and secures with signatures, and proof of SQL queries improves. Now, digging a bit more into that infrastructure, the SXT chain, it's described as a decentralized layer 1 blockchain. Why is being a layer 1 significant here?
Good question. Being a layer 1 means Space and Time has its own independent blockchain, its own base layer for security and consensus. Instead of, say, building on top of Ethereum and inheriting its security model entirely, they have their own specific rules and mechanisms designed primarily for verifying data insertions and queries.
So they control their own destiny in a way, tailor it specifically for verifiable data.
Pretty much. Think of it like having your own purpose-built foundation instead of just renting a floor in a general-purpose skyscraper. It gives them more control and optimization potential for their specific use case.
And this foundation, this layer 1, is secured by validators. How do they make sure these validators act honestly and protect the data?
Yeah. This is where the SXT token comes into play economically. Validators need to stake SXT tokens, basically lock them up as collateral to even participate in validating data and transactions.
Like a security deposit.
Exactly. If a validator gets caught being dishonest, maybe trying to approve bad data or tamper with things, they face slashing. Slashing means they lose a portion, potentially a significant portion, of their staked SXT. So there's a direct financial penalty for bad behavior.
Okay, so you link the data's trustworthiness directly to the validator's own financial skin in the game. Makes sense. And it mentions every SQL query and its ZK proof are linked back to these data commitments signed by the staked validators. How does that connection work? What does that ensure?
Imagine like a chain of custody for data integrity. When data first gets added to the SXT chain, it's validated and signed by these staked validators. This creates a sort of cryptographic anchor point, a commitment. Then any subsequent SQL query run against that data and the ZK proof generated for that query's result are cryptographically linked back to those original signed commitments.
So you can trace the proof all the way back to the securely committed data.
Precisely. It ensures the query results you're getting are verifiably based on data that the network staked, economically incentivized validators agreed was correct at the time it was stored. It reinforces the whole system's integrity.
Okay, that technical underpinning makes sense. Let's pivot a bit and talk about the SXT token itself. The tokenomics info we looked at, dated May 5th, 2025, had some really specific details. And one detail seemed, well, surprising.
Which one was that?
It reported the current circulating supply is 0. Zero SXT circulating as of that date.
Ah,
Even
yes.
though the total supply is set at 5 billion, that seems unusual for a project with this much going on,
Yes.
doesn't it?
It is definitely a noteworthy detail from that snapshot in time. While the documents also mentioned initial plans for, I think, 1.4 billion tokens, 28% circulating upon a Binance listing, the fact that the reported circulating supply at that moment was zero strongly suggests the token hadn't actually hit the open market or widespread public circulation yet.
Right. It implies it was still pre-launch or very, very early stage in terms of public availability.
Correct.
And we also saw info about a Binance launch pool that was allocating 125 million SXT starting May 8th, 2025.
Exactly. So that timing fits. The launch pool would likely be one of the very first mechanisms to get the token out into the hands of the public.
So the zero circulating was likely just before that initial distribution push began.
That seems the most logical interpretation based on the dates. We also saw mentions of planned future marketing allocations, 25 million SXT right after the spot listing, another 50 million 6 months later, gives a glimpse into their longer-term distribution strategy.
Now, here's something else interesting from that data. It lists a reported day one circulating percent of 28%.
Matching that initial Binance figure.
But then it lists a day one real float percent of only 9.5%. What's the difference there? Why have two numbers?
That's a really important distinction. The reported day one circulating percent, 28%, usually refers to all the tokens that are technically unlocked on the blockchain according to the vesting schedule on day one.
Okay, so they could be moved.
Right. But the day one real float percent, 9.5%, tries to estimate the percentage of those unlocked tokens that are actually expected to be freely available for public trading on exchanges right away.
Ah, so the other unlocked tokens might be held by the team or early investors or set aside for things like ecosystem grants and aren't immediately hitting the open market.
Exactly. A big chunk of that initial 28% might be unlocked, but not necessarily floating or available for public buy-sell. For anyone looking at the token, maybe thinking about trading or using it, that difference between unlocked and real float is crucial. It impacts potential price discovery, volatility, actual liquidity.
Right, much lower initial selling pressure if the real float is significantly less than the total unlocked. Good point. Looking further at allocations, airdrops make up 7.5% total. Part of that specifically for Chainlink rewards.
Yep, standard practice. Airdrops to build community, reward early users, especially targeting relevant communities like Chainlink's.
Then market makers get 2%, liquidity gets 2%. Those are usually project or institution control, right?
Yep.
To make sure trading works smoothly on exchanges.
Correct. Essential for healthy market function, ensuring there are buyers and sellers available, and the price isn't wildly unstable from the get-go.
And there was even more detail, an airdrop cluster analysis, breaking that 7.5% down further. 4% general airdrop, 2% for Chainlink, 2% for another group. Seems very targeted.
It does. Strategic airdrops like that can be very effective at seeding the token into the right hands and bootstrapping network effects within specific ecosystems they want to integrate with.
Okay, one last point on tokenomics from that May 5th snapshot. It mentioned that the actual on-chain wallet addresses for these big buckets, airdrop, rewards, ecosystem, market makers, treasuries, weren't publicly available yet.
Right.
And a disclaimer about liquidity tokens potentially moving before spot trading started. What should we take away from that lack of immediate wallet transparency back then?
Well, it's something to note. It means that at that specific point in time, you couldn't independently verify the exact on-chain location of all those initial allocations. It's not necessarily nefarious projects often finalize these things close to launch. The disclaimer about liquidity tokens moving suggests they were likely in the process of setting up the exchange listings, transferring tokens to market makers or liquidity pools right before trading went live.
So understandable pre-launch activity, but highlights that things can be dynamic and maybe not fully transparent until the moment of launch itself.
Precisely. It's just a reminder that the on-chain picture can shift quickly, especially around a token generation event or major listing.
Okay, so that gives us a picture of the SXT tokenomics around launch time. Let's shift back to the business side, the commercial progress and partnerships. These look pretty impressive.
They really did. The Chainlink integration, for instance. Chainlink is, a huge player in Oracle networks. The fact that they're using space and times indexing and database tech for something concrete, like their DeFi yield index, that's strong validation. It shows the tech works and solves a real problem for a major partner.
Yeah, not just theory, but actual use. And the Microsoft Azure collaboration, too, providing SXT's indexing services to Azure developers. That's tapping into a massive developer ecosystem.
Absolutely. It suggests space and time's tech is robust enough and useful enough to be offered through a major cloud platform. That's a significant step for adoption.
And Google Cloud as well, integrating proof of SQL into Google BigQuery.
Yes, that's potentially huge. BigQuery is a widely used, powerful data analytics tool. Integrating proof of SQL there could expose SXT's verifiable query capabilities to a vast existing user base, making it seamless for them to leverage it.
Okay, and one more, Sui. A high-performance Layer 1 blockchain. They're integrating proof of SQL throughout their ecosystem.
That's what the materials indicated. Integrating it across their products and ecosystem shows the tech isn't just for, say, Ethereum-based applications. It demonstrates versatility, that proof of SQL can potentially work with and enhance different kinds of blockchain architectures.
These partnerships really paint a picture, don't they? It feels like tangible evidence that space and time isn't just an interesting idea on paper.
Exactly. These aren't just handshakes. They seem to be active integrations and use cases by significant established players. It provides that crucial real-world evidence for their value proposition.
So if people listening want to follow up, learn more, maybe join the community, where should they look?
Well, the resources we had pointed to the usual suspects for crypto projects. There's a Reddit community, an X feed, formerly Twitter, a Discord server, and a Telegram channel.
Standard community hubs.
Right. Those are usually the best places for the latest updates, discussions, asking questions directly to the team or community members.
And there were also some YouTube links mentioned for video explainers.
Yes, a couple of YouTube videos were listed, likely offering deeper dives into the tech or project vision. Sometimes seeing it explained visually helps.
Good stuff. We'll make sure those links are accessible for you if you want to explore further.
Definitely worth checking out if you want more detail.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. As we look back on this deep dive into space and time, what are the main things that stand out? The key takeaways?
I think, in essence, space and time is building this ambitious infrastructure. It's focused squarely on delivering verifiable access to huge data sets both on-chain and off-chain. Their core innovation, that proof of SQL technology, enables these incredibly fast, ZK-proven data queries. That seems to be the engine driving it all.
Right, the sub-second ZK coprocessor.
Exactly. And they've clearly gained traction, landing a significant investment, forging these impressive partnerships with major tech and Web3 players. The tokenomics, particularly around the launch timing based on our info, had some interesting points, like that initial circulating supply versus real float distinction.
Yeah, and thinking about the impact, this capability, having near real-time, verifiably correct data for smart contracts. It feels like it could really shift how decentralized apps are built and what they can do.
It really could. Imagine smart contracts operating with absolute cryptographic trust in the data they're using without needing slow, centralized intermediaries.
No more garbage in, garbage out if the in is mathematically proven to be correct.
Precisely. It potentially unlocks a whole new level of sophistication and reliability for dApps.
So connecting this back to you, the listener, and the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Maybe a final thought to chew on. If you have truly verifiable, easily accessible blockchain and off-chain data, what does that unlock beyond just DeFi? Think about supply chains, digital identity, maybe even scientific research.
That's the really exciting frontier, isn't it? When this kind of verifiable data infrastructure becomes robust and widespread, what entirely new applications and solutions become possible across all sorts of industries? Things we maybe haven't even conceived of yet.
A fascinating question. We definitely encourage you to check out the white papers, those community links, the videos we mentioned, if you want to keep exploring space and time and this whole idea of verifiable data.
It's a space worth watching for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.